So, as promised, before lunch, and I hope you had a good lunch, and also had a good contact group or budget committee. We continue with the answers from SAP and TIAP on the HFC 23. Please, SAP.
Okay, thank you very much. So I will begin by discussing the questions from the U.S. and that they had for the SAP panel, and there was multiple ones. The contribution of HFC 23 to the current warming, to the radiative forcing of all HFCs, yes, it's 15%. They have that correct. The emissions gap, 10.5 to 12.5 kilotons, yes, it's approximately 170 million metric tons of CO2 equivalents. And what we understand through TEEP's work of emissions of 1.5 to 3.5 kilotons out of 13.9 is only 20%. It's 11 to 25%. So yes, a small fraction of those global emissions, we have a feeling for where they come from. The atmospheric oxidation, we've in our SAP report indicated that it's less than 0.4 of a kiloton. Right now we can't supply a range for that, but we hope to be able to further our understanding and be able to provide more information on a more specific number in the future. On the estimates for eastern and northern China in different figures in the report, it's not possible at this time to take those regional estimates and combine them, or to understand from those estimates what the total emission from all of China might be based on an atmospheric observation analysis. We think more work could be done in that respect, and we're working with members of the SAP and our colleagues, scientific colleagues within China in particular, to be able to provide that information. And it's also true that additional measurements being brought to bear to that issue, both within China and in other countries and regions around the world, will help us do that. With respect to the intervention from China, I would say the SAP appreciates the input, concerns, and interest by China in furthering our understanding of this important issue. And we look forward to further discussions with them and other parties on providing further clarity on this issue. To reflect on the fact that both SAP and TEEP coordinated to compare and contrast the available reporting-based information to the atmospheric-derived information, notwithstanding that we all know there are limitations in both of these sources of available information. But giving that information, being what we have at the moment for considering, there is a clear gap in our understanding and in the magnitudes, both at a global scale, in China, and in other regions of the world. We pointed that out in the report and in our presentation. And we have assessed that gap using comparable methodologies for multiple regions of the world, including with an emphasis on China, for the reasons that the Chinese delegate mentioned. And finally, just to say that the evidence indicates that for China, there are emissions from different regions of their country that persist after 2015, with magnitudes that are substantially larger than the available reporting from the country as a whole suggests. This is an observation that doesn't necessarily imply that the reporting is inaccurate for what it was intended to capture. And so we'll wrap up that response SAP-wise, and I do want to emphasize that we look forward to further discussions to with China, with other delegations, to further our understanding of this. Thanks very much.
Thank you, and I'll pick up the questions to the TEEP. So there was questions from the United States regarding the amount, what percentage is unaccounted for in terms of the reported and estimated emissions from the TEEP versus the atmospheric derived estimates from the SAP. If you recall from before lunch that about 1,500 to 3,500 tonnes was estimated by the TEEP. That comes from Article 7 data for 23 emissions from 22 production plus estimates that we've made. And the TEEP, and the SAP estimates, I'll kind of round them, I'll talk about them without the uncertainties, which will probably make my SAP colleagues unhappy, but 13,900 tonnes. So the unaccounted for quantity, if you're kind of comparing those two, would be 75% to 89% of emissions are unaccounted for in those kind of TEEP estimates, based on compared with the atmospheric derived emissions. Another question was about the volume of 23 that's produced intentionally. We have some difficulty answering that question, but what I can tell you is that the reported production data for all parties that had reported, which the data is currently incomplete because of Kigali Amendment obligation timings, but for 2022 it was around 7,000 tonnes, but we're also not quite sure whether that quantity might include HFC 23 that's produced as a byproduct and then earmarked as production. So take that number as you will. Then another question, what are the processes that could be large enough to explain the gap? Okay, so I might turn to the annex of our report in answering that question. If you recall, HCFC 22 is the major production pathway for HFC 23 generation, making up 95% of the total generation of HFC 23 generation from chemical production pathways. And then another 1% would come from Annex C substances other than 22 and Annex F substances. Another 1% of total global HFC 23 byproduct generation comes from that. And then another 3 to 4% of HFC 23 byproduct generation would come from other chemical pathways other than HCFCs and HFCs, the major one being to make PFB and HFP. So in terms of processes that would be large enough to explain the gap, given that HCFC 22 is the largest, is the chemical pathway that generates the most amount of HFC 23 in terms of generation, I don't think that there's no gaps in our understanding in that sense, but there is gaps in our understanding in terms of the data that's reported under Article 7 for that, for the HFC 23 emissions. And then there was another question about the percentage of global 2 production that's China. I think, obviously I can't provide that data because it's confidential, but in our report we include the amount produced by Article 5 parties for 2022, which was about 990,000 tonnes for Article 5 parties, compared with the total, which was 1.2 million. So the large proportion of Article 5 parties produce 22. Sorry, I said that the wrong way around. And then we had... is there anything further that we as a TEEP can do to understand the data and the uncertainties, I think it was the question, given the table 4.1, which has, broad ranges and things of that sort. There are uncertainties with the estimations in that table 4.1, and then obviously we have questions about the Article 7 data for reported HFC 23 emissions from 22 production. In terms of the estimated HFC 23 emissions and the uncertainties there, in our report we talk about how we've estimated the 23 generation emissions based on our expert industry knowledge of specific plants, using information that is considered commercial in confidence. And in most cases, the commercially confidential nature of fluorocarbon production, process, design, operation and performance means that we actually have insufficient usable data on the specifics of the range of production plants that are currently in operation to apply anything other than generalised emission rates, and that's why there's such a broad range. But this could be improved if we had data that might be available to parties. So we would welcome information that would help us better clarify some of these other estimates in table 4.1 in relation to TFE and HFP manufacture, for example, any information that parties might have on the HCFC 22 plant waste and product stream emissions of HFC 23, other fluorochemical manufacturing, semiconductor and electronics manufacturing. We would be very grateful for any information that you could provide us. And then I would also say that, we could narrow the range with that sort of information because, in a lot of cases, the measurements don't exist or we can't use them because they're confidential. All right, so then also also to mention in that respect that the information that we do have is based on mass balances of inputs into the fluorochemical plants, allowing all emissions, including fugitive emissions, to be estimated and that maximum and minimum estimates to be given. Then there was a question around from the delegate from China about, at least I think it was a question, and I apologise if it was a statement. It's sometimes difficult for us to distinguish that. But there was a comment made, and I think it was a question regarding that TEEP does not use the IPCC default emission factor, which is 4%, I think. And that's correct. In the report we talk about, that we haven't used the IPCC default emission factors, and they are, like the IPCC emission factors are 4% for fluorochemical production generally, and then they kind of speciate it out for different fluorochemical species. But those default emission factors do not include abatement. And, the estimates that we're trying to provide the parties are trying to, certainly in the estimates that we provide for some of those other fluorochemical manufacturing processes, do try to include abatement as part of our estimates. And I go back to that paper that I mentioned earlier, the recent paper, that in terms of 22 production and polymer production, that an estimate of 0.19% of 23 emissions from those types of operations. And that compares with the ratio that you can calculate from the Article 7 reported HFC 23 emissions from 22 production, which is 0.07. So the Article 7 data is lower, has a lower rate of emissions than we would expect. And I think that answers everything, to the best of my knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you for all these very good answers and also giving clarity to the plenary here. And thank you, and you can go back to your seat. And stay available, because probably there will be, let's say later on, when a contact group will be established as soon as we have the CRPs from China and the US, then we can continue. I would like to conclude this agenda item for now and come back to it later, and then go to the agenda item 4B2, potential changes to the data reporting forms for reporting on HFC 23. At the last OEWG, the Secretariat presented the options for potential changes to the reporting form, specifically concerning HFC 23 generated, destroyed, maintained as stocks, and it was presented to all parties. These options were set out in document 46/3, which had been prepared in response to the decision 35/7. When we discussed it at the OEWG, some parties expressed an interest in looking into the issue of the HFC 23 destruction, not only in the reporting form 3, but also in forms 4 and 6. At the conclusions of discussions in Montreal, one representative had offered to prepare a proposal on the matter to serve as a basis for further discussion by MOP 36. And as far as I know, this proposal has been already uploaded as a CRP on the portal. So please, can I ask the US to present it, please?
Thank you very much, Mr. Co-Chair, and you are correct. During the discussions during the OEWG, this party did agree that we would submit ahead of the start of the MOP a decision that could be taken up here, and we have done so. It is a very short decision, but there are 2 attachments to that decision that are longer. The decision recalls the work of the Secretariat to provide options and recognizes that changes are needed to the forms to ensure the correct reporting of HFC 23 production, destruction, and emissions. And if I can just briefly, I will run through the decision. It is very brief, and it asks that the data form 3 be renamed as data on production. And then it asks to approve revisions to data form 6, as well as to provide and agree to accept the revisions to the instructions, and those have been attached to the decision, changes to both the forms and the instructions. Those changes were discussed in general in the OEWG. So what they lay out is for parties to consider that production of substances controlled under the Montreal Protocol would be reported for both HFC 23 and all other substances in the same way. So we would remove some changes that were made to data form 3 specific to HFC 23 and instead revert to reporting on data form 3 consistent throughout each of the substances. Similar for data form 4, where there's indication in the instructions of changes in how information on destruction would be reported for HFC 23 compared to other HFCs. The changes in the instructions would revert to a more aligned manner for reporting destruction, so that it would be aligned with all other substances. With regards to data form 6, which is the only data form that is unique for HFC 23, the changes to that form include making some modifications to the headers and removing what is a redundant column between data form 3 and other data forms. So our suggestion would be to take this up in the contact group, since this is quite difficult to sort of discuss in plenary in a way in which all parties can see the forms and the instructions and be able to iterate on them, but to send that to the contact group to continue our discussions and be able to come back to plenary with a path forward. Thank you.
Thank you by putting forward the CRP so quickly, and it's very helpful. First, would like to ask if there are any questions on that, and then indeed propose the way forward. And if there's one, I see one party, Argentina.
Muchas gracias, señor copresidente. Quisiéramos expresar el interés de iniciar un grupo de contacto en este tema. Compartimos varias de las preocupaciones planteadas por la distinguida delegada de Estados Unidos, así como también nos gustaría que el reporte no deje de reflejar algunas consideraciones en relación a lo que ya hemos venido discutiendo desde Quito, particularmente para los casos de los países que tenemos producción de 22 y que el 23 se produce en ese proceso productivo y no como una producción voluntaria de 23. En ese sentido consideramos que no debe ser tratado de la misma manera y entendemos que el artículo 1 del protocolo así lo refleja, haciendo una diferenciación entre lo que es producción y lo que es generación no intencionada, y creemos también que en ese sentido se debe reflejar de buena manera el reporte de los saldos a final de año, en los casos como en el nuestro, donde hay stocks que quedan para ser destruidos posteriormente, a fin de poder dar cuenta y cuentas claras en relación a este tema. Así que apoyamos la creación del Contact Group y esperamos poder resolver estos temas en ese espacio. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, and good to know that you would like to re-establish the contact group. I have China on my list, and then I would like to conclude how to proceed further.
谢谢主席，我代表团感谢美国代表团提出了 CRP 的文件，我们将认真的就此进行研究。我代表团希望强调 ，HFC 23产生、销毁、使用以及排放等各环节涉及的问题较为复杂，因此在数据表格修订过程中，应充分考虑 HFC 23的特点，结合议定书规定的履约义务，进一步明确 HFC 23数据报送的要求，使数据报送表格更加科学、合理、可行。作为一项核心履约义务，当前议定书的数据报告任务已经十分繁重。我们认为 HFC 23数据表格的修订应避免数据交叉重复报告的情形， 尽量简化数据报送表格。与此同时，从当前 HFC 23排放问题讨论的情况看，缔约方对 HFC 23的认知仍较为有限，特别是它的产生来源可能高于当前认为的水平，包括 HCFC 22副产以及相关氟化工生产过程中的无组织排放等，仍需开展进一步研究。其他受控物质的报告聚焦可计量的生产量、分用途的使用量，这都是各缔约方可以较为准确报送的。而对于 HFC 23，我们首次关注排放量的报送，这与以往的数据报告逻辑完全不同。核心问题是 HFC 23的产生量存在着巨大的不确定性，它包括了可计量的生产量和目前不可计量的无组织排放量。在议定书没有较为统一的排放量核算方法，对排放源还存在诸多不了解的前提下，将其作为强制的报送数据义务，甚至基于此来衡量全球履约是否存在问题，看来是不严谨的。我们确实有必要审视目前 A 区数据表格的科学性。因此，建议结合 HFC 23排放问题的相关信息，考虑对 HFC 23数据报送表格进行修订，以可行的方式更好地反映 HFC 23产生排放的情况。谢谢主席。
Thank you. Good to hear your views on the format. I would like to propose the following: that we re-establish the contact group, and that let's say that the time and the place where the group meets will follow suit. So this agenda item stays open, and we establish a contact group. And then I would like to hand over to my co-chair, Miruza.
Thank you. And now we turn to agenda item 4E on feedstock uses of controlled substances. At OLWG 46, we discussed the issue of feedstocks. The discussion was based on the 2024 Tea Progress Report. Section 5.3 on feedstocks was developed in cooperation with the SAP in response to Decision 35.8. After an initial discussion on the matter, Australia, speaking also on behalf of Canada, Norway, and Switzerland, introduced a draft decision. An informal group discussion was held, and the proposal we agreed to forward the draft decision as revised by the informal group to the current meeting for further consideration. The revised draft decision is set out as draft decision 36B in the draft decisions document 36/3. I would like to suggest that we establish the contact group and resume the discussions in that group. I would like to open the floor to see if there are any delegates who have interventions to make in the plenary. Thank you. We will then establish the contact group, and may I suggest that Leslie from Grenada and Michelle from Canada to chair this contact group. The room and the venue and time will be announced later. And now I invite parties to turn to agenda item 4F on enhancing the global and regional atmospheric monitoring of substances controlled by the Montreal Protocol. At OEWG 46, the parties considered the Secretariat's report responding to Decision 3514 on enhancing the atmospheric monitoring of controlled substances, prepared in consultation with the Multilateral Fund Secretariat, the Ozone Research Managers, the SAP, and the TEEP. The report included refined cost estimates for the establishment of stations for the atmospheric monitoring of controlled substances and options for sustainable funding for new regional monitoring capacities. Following the parties' discussions on the matter, Canada and the USA put forward a draft decision including requests to the Secretariat and the Executive Committee of the Multilateral Fund, and also an invitation to the parties to the Vienna Convention to undertake several actions on the matter. The draft decision was discussed in a contact group, which revised part of the text, but was unable to review all the paragraphs. The revised draft decision is set out as draft decision 36C in document 36/3. I would like to suggest that we establish a contact group straight away and to continue discussions on the draft decision. Is this acceptable to the parties? EU, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Of course, we have interest in continuing the discussions on the draft decision, but we should, in this context, perhaps extend the scope of the work done by this contact group in view of the need to have certain decisions corresponding under the Vienna Convention to secure and to mirror elements we are agreeing in the discussion discussed at the OEWG. Therefore, we would suggest to extend the scope of this decision to related decisions concerning the Vienna Convention, decisions needed for this purpose. Thank you.
Thank you, EU. So we will establish the contact group, and may I suggest that Liana from Armenia and Alejandro from Italy to co-chair this contact group. Thank you, and we will announce the room at a later stage. I also note that discussions under this item are linked to discussions of the Budget Committee under Agenda Item 3, as well as to discussions under Agenda Item 5B on the status of the General Trust Fund for financing activities on research and systematic observations relevant to the Vienna Convention. Therefore, the draft decisions being considered under these agenda items will have linkages. I have United States and Finland requesting for the floor. Yes, you have the floor.
Thank you, Co-Chair, and it's possible. I interrupted you too soon. I was just trying to listen carefully to the mandate. So from our perspective, just to say, we agreed with the EU that essentially the mandate, we're following up on the work we did at the OEWG. There's a draft decision there, and then it's specifically the related draft decisions on monitoring under the Vienna Convention. Perhaps you were about to clarify that, but when you initially mentioned the mandate, I didn't hear you specifically say we would take that up. So if you could just clarify that, and just to note our support for what the EU said, I just want to make sure we have a clear mandate that's inclusive of both. Thank you very much, Co-Chair.
Thank you. Now I give the floor to Finland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to inform that the members of the Bureau who were participating in the ORM 12 have prepared 2 CRPs, the other one on the recommendations of the ozone research managers, and the other one related to Vienna Convention General Trust Fund. And these are also related, especially the latter one, to the CRP presented by United States and Canada. And actually there is also the fourth one that is related to the monitoring also. So budget decision is also needed, but at least it would be recommendable to as European Union was saying, to tackle these two CRPs, the US and Canada CRP negotiated at the OEWG, and the Vienna Convention CRP on GTF in order to have right elements in right decisions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Finland. Thank you. I also note that we have not yet discussed items 5A and 5B. So once these agenda items are discussed in the plenary, we will then discuss there in the this contact group as well. If that is agreeable to the parties. Okay then, so we will announce the time and venue of this contact group later. With this, Canada, are you requesting for the floor? Yes.
Yes, thank you. Apologize, Madam Co-Chair, if I'm not completely understanding. So at this point, until we consider agenda item 5, are you saying the mandate of the contact group is only on the draft decision from the OEWG? Because we heard that Finland, as a member of the Bureau, and the EU had also suggested the possibility of discussing a corresponding decision from the Vienna COP. That would be for the Conference of the Parties of the Vienna Convention. So I think from our perspective, you know, we could start with discussing the draft decision from the MOP. And if there's no objection, understanding that agenda item 5 has not started yet, but given the relation between these issues, we would be okay with also considering within the same contact group a possible corresponding decision for the COP. So, but I just wanted to make sure that we were all clear with respect to what could be discussed within this contact group. Thank you.
Thank you, Canada. Like I said, we have not yet discussed 5A and 5B. So let me discuss with my co-chair and get back to you on our way forward on this. Thank you. We'll wait for the other agenda items to be introduced and CRP to be introduced when the agenda items come in, and then later to be combined, if that is agreeable. Because we have only introduced this now for the time being, and then later, probably tomorrow, we will be introducing the other agenda items. Thank you, if that is agreeable. Okay, with this, I now hand over to my co-chair.
Thank you. Now I would like to go to agenda item 4C, life cycle refrigerant management. At the OEWG, we reviewed the report of the LRM task force, and the summary of the discussions in Montreal, as captured in the OEWG report, provides an important context for today's discussions. And yesterday, we had, of course, a workshop that was held on this issue, and a summary of the outcomes of the workshops has been put forward on the portal already. It's available in English, not yet in all UN languages. The summary is largely based on the key takeaways messages that participants provided via the mobile app after the workshop. Before opening the floor for discussions, my co-chair and I would like to thank all facilitators, presenters, resource experts, and participants for their valuable contributions at yesterday's workshop. And we hope that the parties had time enough to reflect on those discussions. The floor is open. Who would like to take the floor? I have Nigeria on my list. Please indicate if you would like to speak as well. Nigeria first.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Since this is the first time Nigeria is taking the floor, I would like to join other delegates to thank the Ozone Secretariat for the excellent organization of this meeting, and the government of Thailand for hosting this meeting. So Nigeria has supported strongly the need for concrete actions on the issue of life cycle refrigerant management as a very critical factor to be integrated into the Montreal Protocol for the successful implementation of the Kigali Amendment and the management of HFCs. So we wish to thank the Ozone Secretariat for organizing the workshop on life cycle refrigerant management, which came out with notable outcomes that can be worked on towards effective life cycle refrigerant management. Our delegation notes the importance of strengthening the servicing sector in terms of training on good practices to prevent leakages, encourage recovery and reclamation, and therefore reduce the need for virgin refrigerants that are required to be phased out under the protocol. So considering that most technicians in A5 countries are not financially strong, and in order to achieve effective LRM, the protocol may wish to consider supporting parties to provide their small workshop technicians with recovery and recycling tools at a subsidized rate to make it affordable for them. Going forward, therefore, our delegation is of the view that discussion should continue on this subject, center mainly on sustainable financing that will assure the achievement of the full climate benefits of effective life cycle refrigerant management. On this note, my delegation will support the establishment of a contact group to continue discussion on this issue with a view to coming up with a draft decision for the 36 MOP. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nigeria. Are there any more requests for the floor? I don't have anybody on my list. It was a very exhausting workshop then. Kuwait. Please, Kuwait, and I have Bahrain. Kuwait and Bahrain.
Thank you very much, Mr. Co-Chair. And as this delegation take the floor for the first time, we would like to thank the government of Thailand for their hospitality and welcomes. And also I will extend my appreciation for the Ozone Secretariat for organizing this meeting and this document, and for the achievement of the workshop in a way that the setup was very good and clear for us. We have the leverage and the time to have more conservation and more comment and more dialogue among us to understand several issues related to the agenda item that we are talking about, life cycle refrigerant management. I think within what was happening in the last day, we understand there is a lot of issues to be more clarified, and there is a lot of discussion have to be raised and discussed in a very conservative manner and ways. I think that the startup was good, and I think this should be also having another chance to be a dialogue and discussions and like this. But I don't think that we are in a position today to take a decision or a draft decision on this issue, but we wish to see that work complete in a way, or maybe another workshop specified for the prioritizing element that the parties have indicated to the Ozone Secretariat and for the people who organize these workshops. I think we should not leave it there. We should build up on that one. And I think we have to engage more specifically in a specific issue of all this cycle to verify a lot of issues. And sincerely, I thank all the participants in the workshop for their information, for their patience, for our question and understanding where we are coming from. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kuwait. I have Bahrain and then the Dominican Republic. Bahrain first, please.
شكرا سيد الرئيس المشارك، وأيضا بصفتي المرة الأولى التي أتداخل فيها أود أن أتقدم بخالص الشكر والتقدير إلى حكومة تايلاند على حسن الاستقبال وكرم الضيافة في هذه المدينة الجميلة. شكر موصول إلى سكرتارية الأوزون على حسن التنظيم لهذا الاجتماع وجميع المستندات المهمة التي تم إرفاقها بسلاسة وسهولة للاطلاع عليها بشكل مسبق لهذا الاجتماع وكاف. فيما يخص ورشة العمل، أيضا هناك تنظيم نوعي ومتميز لهذه الورشة، وأعتقد أن الملاحظات السابقة للورش قد أخذت بعين الاعتبار هذه المرة، وبالتالي أنا أثني أيضا على حسن التنظيم لهذه الورشة وعلى الطريقة النوعية التي قدمت فيها المواضيع، وأيضا التنوع الذي وجدناه من خلال المحاضرين. أود أن أثني على ما تفضل به ممثل دولة الكويت، وأكون معه بنفس الخط والامتداد الذي تكلم فيه، ولكني أود أيضا أن أثير مسألة أن هذه الورشة بقدر المعلومات القيمة التي تم تداولها لأنها تركت تحديات كبيرة ومفتوحة ما زالت تحتاج إلى أجوبة مهمة. أحد الأمور التي تم مناقشتها موضوع الأجهزة والمعدات، ونعلم جميعا وقد تم إثارة هذه المسائل في المجموعات الفرعية التي تم العمل عليها يوم أمس، ومنها موضوع التخلص التدريجي القادم لمواد ال HCFCs، والتي نتوقع أنه بعد 10 أعوام من الآن ستبدأ المعدات الكبيرة كالمكيفات والثلاجات وإلى آخره البدء في الوصول إلى نهاية عمرها تدريجياً. المتوقع أنه بين الأعوام 2030 ل 2050 هناك كمية كبيرة ومهولة من هذه المعدات ستكون خارج الخدمة، وسينتج عنها كميات أيضا مهولة وكبيرة من وسائط التبريد. وبالتالي الأسئلة الكبيرة التي طرحت وما زالت مطروحة ومفتوحة لم تتم الإجابة عليها حتى الآن، وهي كيف سيتم التعامل مع هذه الوسائط؟ هل سيتم تجميعها؟ هل سيتم إعادة تدويرها أم سيتم لماذا؟ وإذا كان سيتم تجميعها هل ستذهب إلى عملية تدمير؟ كيف؟ وأين؟ وكم التكلفة؟ هذه أسئلة منطقية ومعقولة، لأن ترك الأمر سيكون له آثار كبيرة وكارثية، خصوصاً بعد كل الجهود التي عمل عليها بروتوكول مونتريال خلال أكثر من 35 عام. ونحن الآن أمام نتيجة كبيرة. هناك مسألة التمويل وقد طرحت أيضاً، ولكنها لم تكن واضحة وكافية، وبالتالي أنا أتفق مع ما جاء به ممثل دولة الكويت أن لابد من إمعان النظر أكثر والاطلاع ومناقشة هذه المسائل وأخذ وقتها الكافي لنضع الحلول الحقيقية كأطراف في هذه الاتفاقية المستقبل. شكرا سيد الرئيس المشارك.
Thank you, Bahrain. And I have then the Dominican Republic.
Estimado presidente, como es la primera vez que intervenimos en esta magna asamblea, agradecemos al Reino de Tailandia por la hospitalidad y a la Secretaría de los Unos por la organización. Con respecto al taller que hemos celebrado en el día de ayer, tal como han hablado los delegados que nos anteceden, verdaderamente quedamos con muchas interrogantes, muchas de ellas relacionadas con la parte legal y la parte que tiene que ver con otros convenios que de una manera u otra tratan estos temas de estos residuos que no son manejados específicamente por el Protocolo de Montreal, pero que sí somos parte de la problemática. Creemos que a partir de esta reunión se debe seguir abordando el tema, principalmente en los aspectos financieros. ¿Qué podemos hacer nosotros como Protocolo de Montreal para la reducción y eliminación final de estos residuos? Sabiendo que estos residuos, de una manera u otra, es el usuario final, el importador y el productor que tienen la responsabilidad de los mismos. Los gobiernos, como parte de este tema, de una manera u otra, tienen que aportar soluciones de responsabilidad extendida de los productores y, como le mencioné, de los usuarios finales. Pero, ¿qué podemos hacer nosotros a través del Protocolo de Montreal para colaborar con esta situación mundial que de una manera u otra nos va a seguir afectando? Estimamos que la capacitación, certificación de los técnicos, el lograr que los técnicos se empoderen y se les dé algún tipo de incentivo para que estos técnicos, en el momento en que desechen un equipo, lo lleven a un centro especializado para su manejo y destrucción final. Son muchos temas y, como hemos dicho, creemos que se debe mantener el tema y en la próxima reunión seguir abordando más el tema. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Dominican Republic, and please indicate when you would like to speak. So push the button, because that makes clear who is requesting for the floor. And I have Malaysia on my list, but I have no other parties requesting for the floor. Yes, they show up now. So it's Malaysia, Micronesia, Egypt, Kenya. I'm waiting in Bangladesh, and I really would like to close the list now. Somebody's disappearing already, so it's now Malaysia, Micronesia, Egypt, Bangladesh and Kenya. So Kenya, you really would like to take the floor because the button was going on and off. So if that's the list, please, I would like to close it then, but Malaysia first.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Since this is the first time I take the floor on behalf of my delegation, I would like to express our gratitude to the government of the people of Thailand for the warm welcome accord. Indeed, I would like also to congratulate to the both co-chairs and our great appreciation to the Ozone Secretariat for their excellent arrangement of this meeting. Malaysia would like to congratulate the Ozone Secretariat for organizing the workshop on LRM yesterday, and I would like to express our gratitude to all the speakers and panelists who shared their knowledge and useful experience in the workshop. Malaysia is of the view that several challenges must be addressed accordingly to ensure the success of LRM efforts and achieve significant reduction in ODS and HFCs advancing climate action. Malaysia would like to reiterate the coordination effort between the Montreal Protocol and other multilateral environment agreements are significant importance. Strengthen regulatory measures, financial support, and enhance capacity building are essential to effectively implementing LRM for the country. My delegation support to continue the discussion and exchange experience in the subject matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Malaysia. Then I have Micronesia on my list.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. The delegation of the Federated States of Micronesia wishes to begin by extending our heartfelt thanks to the government of Thailand for hosting this meeting and warmly welcoming us again in the vibrant city of Bangkok. We also wish to thank the Secretary.
One moment, the translation is gone. Micronesia, once again. Micronesia, let's try it once, and no, it's. Please take another mic. I think that would be the best. So you take the microphone next to you. I think the microphone of Mauritania is on, so if you can take that one, and thank all the others for helping.
I thank my kind neighbor from Mauritania for ceding their seat. So to begin again, I'm not sure how much was captured previously. The delegation of the Federated States of Micronesia wishes to begin by extending our heartfelt thanks to the government of Thailand for hosting this meeting and warmly welcoming us in the vibrant city of Bangkok. We also wish to thank the Secretariat for their excellent work in preparing this meeting, and especially for the additional work they undertook to prepare yesterday's workshop on life cycle refrigerant management. In our view, it was a great success that has served to build knowledge and understanding on life cycle refrigerant management among parties and stakeholders as we consider how to activate its multiple benefits for the planet. Last year, we took a transformative decision, one that opened our eyes to a bigger landscape of possibility and a broader horizon of opportunities. This more expansive vision is both awe-inspiring and daunting, because it is a vision with greater complexities, challenges, and perhaps even risks, which, like so many things in life, go hand in hand with greater rewards. But these are not ordinary rewards, like fame and fortune. They are extraordinary, because they serve to make our admirable treaty even better. They're extraordinary because they could make the Montreal Protocol into the greatest of all time. Why are we not the GOAT, as they say, the greatest of all time, you may ask? It is because despite our past successes and the road from Kigali leading us away from HFCs, there are still millions and millions of tons, billions and growing in fact, of ozone-depleting and climate-forcing substances that could escape into the atmosphere, threatening damages that the protocol has worked so hard to prevent, and even more. Yes, more because our scientific panel tells us that the world is both warming and developing economically and will generate millions of more refrigerators and air conditioners in the near future. The greenhouse gases, the mountains of waste, and the energy burden that this will place on our shoulders will be crippling. But it does not have to happen. We can see from our wider perspective that there is more we can do, more than an initial report and a workshop for certain. Our decision last year on LRM was foundational, building common understanding of what can be done and highlighting options for how. We have begun to build the foundation, and now the work begins. For this reason, we respectfully submit to the parties for their consideration a draft CRP that will build further knowledge and capacity so that we may realize our potential to reach our goal under the Vienna Convention and its protocol. The work to come, as we conceive from this higher vantage point, is where we truly deliver on our ability to prevent the release of greenhouse gases that are threatening the lives and livelihoods of every country in this room, and the very existence of the most vulnerable, like our small island archipelago. Reflecting on the TEEP report and the workshop discussions, we consider there are several building blocks that can help all countries begin to realize their full potential for LRM. Paragraph 1 of our CRP requests complementary information from the TEEP to the first report by providing additional information on resources, challenges, stakeholder engagement, data gathering and use, and opportunities for regional approaches. The CRP details how this request goes beyond the information the TEEP has already provided, as we do not intend to duplicate their excellent efforts in the past report. Paragraph 2 reflects on the current efforts underway in the Multilateral Fund, which began prior to the knowledge building we have begun on LRM. In fact, the inventories of banks and associated national plans are an excellent step towards strengthening LRM. But it is possible there could be additional opportunities to explore as parties advance on these projects. That, if identified now, could be taken on board to strengthen both inventories and plans. This paragraph invites the Secretariat and Executive Committee to reflect on this possibility. Paragraph 3 turns to the Ozone Secretariat to compile an online library of resources on LRM that could be useful to the parties. In recognition of a number of key gaps in information, we also asked the Secretariat to collect some additional information that could clarify our landscape even further. And finally, paragraph 4 encourages parties that may have begun their inventories and plans to consider including additional LRM activities and to strengthen their national policies and regulations to incorporate more LRM where possible. We are grateful for the opportunity to present these ideas for the consideration of the parties, and we hope to have the chance to discuss them further in a contact group during this meeting. Thank you very much, Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Micronesia, for introducing the CRP. Egypt.
Thank you very much, Mr. Co-Chair. Bidawri, I would like to add my voice to those who thanks the Ozone Secretariat for organizing this very informative and very useful workshop. It came on time, and I think we are in need of such workshop. during our doing the survey to collect the unused refrigerant and then to prepare the strategy to implement our RL refrigerant life cycle management. This delegation we recognize that this workshop answer many questions that we are in need to know, and we have very good information. At the same time, this workshop is always, is also create a new question that till now we don't know how to answer these questions. I can see there is some challenges facing some country. One of them is the gas analyzer is not available in many service provider, maybe one source, and we have to wait long time to receive. I don't know why the gas analyzer is not in the market. It's widely available and with a reasonable prices. The second is the linkage and synergy between the Basel Convention and the Montreal Protocol to facilitate the movement of the unused refrigerant from the country that they don't have technical capacity to do the refrigerant life cycle management and to export to some countries that they have this technical capacity. Maybe they face challenges from the transboundary if, as indicated in the workshop, that this unused refrigerant can be classified as hazardous substance. So we need also to clarify this. Is it easy to send our unused, or we need to have approval from Basel Convention? There is also a need to provide the RR equipment. There is a need for the cylinder, RR cylinder, and I was surprised that a country like Australia, they have challenges in availability of the RR cylinder, but they came with a nice and beautiful solution. We thank them. They are, invent some idea to rent this cylinder, not to buy the cylinder. That means they maximize the number of the recovery cylinder in the country. So this something I learned, and I like this idea. We need to enhance the capacity of the technician, of course, and we need to update and enforce the policies and bylaws. We need to also do some effort for collecting information and preparation of the report a lot of things, actually, we have to do it just to make sure that we are in the right way. But all this, I think, convert to a cost, to money. And in our country, some country, especially 5 countries, they don't have those resources to do all this. And of course, they will need the technical and financial assistance from this body, maybe other. But to conclude that this delegation is recommending in the replenishment, next replenishment of the multilateral fund is to take all this cost has to be carefully taken and calculated just to cover the expected cost for this process. And I stop here and thank you very much.
Thank you, Egypt. Just to also to be clear, I just closed the list, but a CRP has been introduced, so if countries also would like to react on the CRP, then that's still possible. So in that way, I have some more speakers on my list already. I have Bangladesh, Kenya, Maldives, Myanmar, South Africa, Switzerland, and the United States. Please indicate if you would like to speak, but especially also on the CRP. So first, Bangladesh.
Thank you, Co-Chair, and good afternoon, colleagues. Bangladesh wishes to congratulate and appreciate the Ozone Secretariat for organizing a very productive and very elaborative workshop on life cycle refrigerant management, LRM. And we feel that, Bangladesh feels that this has been very wonderful in terms of the knowledge, the information they have provided yesterday. And we got the greater understanding in terms of having a series of discussions, panel discussions, as well as the presentations. And we feel that there are some avenues they have presented in terms of the potentials, opportunities, the benefits. Some of them actually presented about the multiple co-benefits that can be achieved through the process, through pursuing for this LRM process. And in one hand, and on the other, we have also seen some challenges, the gaps, and some obstacles that we have to overcome as we move along the process in the future. And we feel that when we talk about this LRM, there has to be some national preparedness to be in place. So we feel that through the discussions, these very rich discussions, we understand the necessity of getting involved in the process at national level, particularly in terms of having a very good, rightful inventory on banks, ODS banks, and the equipments containing ODS, and at the same time, how to deal with the recovery items or the recycling or reclaiming issues. So fundamentally, at the end of the day, we have to have the substantial adequate resources to deal with these important elements. And at the same time, we also see that there are some opportunities in terms of the financial and technological cooperation within this process, within this mechanism. But there are other opportunities out there outside this process and this mechanism. So we have to explore which the potential elements or the opportunities that we can tap within this process and outside the process, particularly the process of climate change. And we also feel that there are some coherent approach to be taken up in terms of multiple conventions, including climate change, Paris Agreement, and Basel Convention. And I feel that this is a very important element that we need to discuss further, and the COP can take note of this very good findings as a summary note, or whatever the parties will like to put forward. But this is important elements that we need to see the capturing of progress in our deliberations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bangladesh. Then Kenya.
Thank you very much, Mr. Co-Chair. Since this is the first time for this delegation to take the floor, I wish to thank the government of Thailand for the hospitality extended to our delegation. Also, I wish to thank the Ozone Secretariat for the excellent organization of this combined meeting. Further, I wish also to thank the Ozone Secretariat for organizing the LRM workshop. During LRM workshop, we considered pertinent issues. The RRR, we had the leakage, we had actually the finance and destruction. I know for my delegation, we were expecting to move all around to attend all these talks within the level of that LRM. But then we didn't have time. So in that case, because people were supposed to rotate to check on what was happening, Mr. Co-Chair, I think we still need time to consider these pertinent issues so that we know how they are going to be tackled. Because we know, we were informed that even for finance, it will take time to get the guidelines on how some of these recovered refrigerants will be attended to, or the recovered equipment. So in that case, I would wish to say that in this meeting, possibly if we can actually discuss it further and maybe consider it in the next, so that we can have maybe the second workshop, whereby we'll have to go in detail so that we know some of these issues that are pertinent to this LRM. As we all know that LRM is the key for the Montreal Protocol, since we are all tackling in various countries. And the countries that are from Article 5 may not be able to have that capacity of handling these cases. So in that case, Mr. Co-Chair, this delegation would wish that maybe further discussion on these issues should be done so that we are able to take a proper decision on how we are going to tackle those issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kenya. Before I proceed, I have Maldives, Myanmar, South Africa, Switzerland, United States, and the European Union on my list. And I also would like to ask if people would like to reflect also on the CRP. So if there are parties who would like to speak, please push the button. Then I can put you on the list. And I'm just waiting for a moment. So then this is the list. Then I would give Maldives the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. As this is the first time that Maldives is taking the floor, we would like to thank the Ozone Secretariat for the excellent arrangements for the meeting and the workshop on life cycle refrigerant management, and also thank the Kingdom of Thailand for the warm hospitality. We would like to see that LVC's context discussed when we are looking into LRM. As low volume consuming countries, it's quite challenging to implement LRM efficiently. To make the implementation easier and to address the challenges of the countries like Maldives, where islands are geographically dispersed, we would like to see this being further discussed in the contact group. Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you for this very brief and very clear intervention. Then Myanmar.
Thank you, Co-Chair, Chair, and Ozone Secretary. As this is the first time intervention of Myanmar, I would like to thank and congratulate the Thailand and government and the people for being a host country for this very important meeting. And we, Myanmar, is following its commitment to Montreal Protocol. We are now suffering from insufficient equipment, including recovery and recycling, and imbalance between market demand and supply of refrigerants, especially the HCFCR 22. At the moment, our quota is about 50 metric tons, but since next year, our quota will be dropped to 50%, or about 50%. So we worry about the illegal trade. On the other hand, we have 4 refrigerant gas analyzers, but 2 of them are not working well, while the rest are not sure. So we would like to request for further gas analyzer and necessary equipment support. And in the context of LRM, we support and we will continue cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Myanmar. Now South Africa, please.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. My delegation is extending gratitude to the Secretariat for excellent organization of the meeting and the workshop yesterday. My delegation is also thankful to the people and Kingdom of Thailand for hosting the meeting. South Africa is of the view that environmentally sound management throughout a refrigerant's life cycle could lead to reduced equipment leakage and refrigerant loss. This sound management would also increase availability of recycled and reused refrigerants and will assist parties in meeting their obligations. South Africa calls for provision of training, capacity building, and technology transfer to Article 5 parties for leakage prevention, leakage detection methods, refrigerant recovery, and accessibility of equipment for leakage detection. South Africa also furthermore calls for provision of adequate financial resources to prepare national inventories of banks of used or unwanted controlled substances and a plan for the collection, transport, and disposal of such substances, including consideration of recycling, reclamation, and cost-effective destruction. My delegation is ready to engage on these matters and the introduced CRP in the contact group. Thank you.
Thank you. United States, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. We'd like to thank the Ozone Secretariat for the organization of the Life Cycle Refrigerant Management Workshop. It was very informative. There was a lot of information provided, and we appreciated that we weren't in the same room all day just listening to presentation after presentation, and that we were able to take deeper dives into some specific topics and actually move around the venue. So thank you for this interactive workshop. And also thank you to Micronesia for introducing this CRP. We've been able to take a very quick look at it, and we think there's some interesting ideas presented in the workshop, in the CRP, that we would appreciate having further discussion on in a contact group. We do think that we have seen some framing of the CRP that we would maybe like to discuss further and work on. So we appreciate the opportunity to have further discussions in a contact group. Thank you.
Thank you. And last speaker on my list, as the list was already closed, was European Union. So European Union.
Yes, thank you, Co-Chair. For us, the sound refrigerant management is indeed a very pertinent topic, so we would also, like previous speakers, like to thank the Secretariat for a wonderful organization of a workshop. Yesterday we have listened and learned a lot. We would also like to thank Micronesia for their CRP. We have also taken a peek, and we see a lot of interesting elements. So we would be very interested in discussing this further in a contact group. We would, just as a way of example, particularly looking into how to better integrate this with the previous decisions, 3511. But again, a very important topic that requires more discussion. So thank you.
Thank you. And now I would like to confer with my co-chair. Come back in a minute. Yes, we had a short deliberation, and the proposal is to establish a contact group, if that's agreeable by all parties. I'm looking around. So then the CRP can be discussed in a contact group. And let's say Morgan Simpson of the UK is available, and we are looking for someone from the A5 who can do it as well. That the time and venue will be announced later on. So there will be a contact group established for this. And then the next item is for my co-chair.
Thank you, Ralph. So let us now move to the consideration of item 4G on climate-friendly alternatives for metered dose inhalers. At OEWG 46, the EU presented a draft decision on measures to facilitate the transition to MDIs with low GWP propellants. Good progress had been made in the contact group that considered the draft decision, and parties agreed to forward the draft decision to MOP 36 for further consideration. That draft decision is set out as draft decision 36D in draft decisions document 36/3. So I would like to suggest that we establish a contact group and continue the discussions there. Is this acceptable to the parties? Okay then, thank you. We will then establish the contact group. And may I suggest Henry from Switzerland? And we will find someone from F5 to co-chair this contact group. The time and the venue will be posted later. No, he's not there. With this, I will hand over to my co-chair again. Thank you.
Thank you, Maruza. Now we at agenda item 4H on the future availability of halons and alternatives. This matter also was discussed at OEWG last time, and it was especially on the concern on the long-term availability of halons and revisions of the predicted timelines for running out of halons. It also was described in the 2022 quadrennial assessment report and the 22 progress report of the FTOC. At OEWG 46, Canada, speaking on behalf of Australia and the USA, introduced a proposal for draft decision on measures to support the sustainable management of recovered, recycled, or reclaimed halons. The contact group discussed it further, and the working group agreed to resume the discussions at MOP 36 on basis of the draft decision as revised by the contact group. I would like to suggest that we establish a contact group right away and resume the discussions in this contact group. Are there any objections to that? I don't see. So then we establish a contact group, and I would like to ask the same persons who conducted that group, Andrew Clark from the USA and Ali Toumayi from Saudi Arabia, to chair this group. Then we go to the next agenda item 4I on the possible compliance deferral for Article 5 countries. Article 5 Group 2 parties, I would like to say. We heard a presentation from TEEP at OEWG in response to the technology review that MOP 28 had requested in decision 28/2. The review was to be conducted 4 or 5 years before 28 to consider a compliance deferral of 2 years from the freeze date of 28 for Article 5 Group 2 parties to address growth above a certain threshold in relevant sectors. Chapter 8 of TEEP's 24 progress report sets out the panel's response to that request, and the progress report is available on the OEWG portal, and a summary of the TEEP's response is set out in document 46/2 at 1. During discussions in Montreal, the main concerns raised by delegates were related to limited local data and general lack of focus on the challenges of countries with high ambient air temperatures. Subsequently, India, speaking on behalf of Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia, presented a draft decision. A contact group discussed the proposal, and OEWG agreed to forward the draft decision as revised by the contact group to the current meeting for further consideration. I would like to suggest that we establish or re-establish the contact group and continue the consideration of this draft decision. Is that acceptable to everybody? I see it's acceptable. Then I would like to ask the two co-conveners of that group, Cornelius Ryan from the European Union and Anna Maria Kleinmeier from Micronesia, to take up their work again. Time and venue will be posted later on. And now I would like to give over to Miruza.
Thank you. And now let us turn to agenda item 4J on strengthening Montreal Protocol institutions, including combating illegal trade. At OEWG 46, parties considered a note compiled by the Secretariat with the information provided by parties on illegal trade practices and the approaches taken by national authorities to identify and address such cases. That note had been requested in Decision 35/12 on further strengthening Montreal Protocol institutions, including for combating illegal trade. Subsequently, the representative of the EU introduced a draft decision outlining the next steps for further strengthening Montreal Protocol institutions. Following the discussions of the draft decision at a contact group, it was agreed to continue consideration of the draft decision at MOP 36. The draft decision as revised by the contact group is available as draft decision 36G in document 36/3. During discussions of the draft decision, the EU had acknowledged parties' concerns and feedback shared at the contact group, and also had indicated that they would submit a new version of the text for consideration by MOP 36. So now I would like to see if EU has a new version to be presented here. EU?
Thank you, Ms. Co-Chair. Indeed, I can confirm that we listened carefully to some concerns related to our original proposal, and we subsequently tried to capture and to clarify some of those issues in a revised draft, which is in the process of being published, and that we would like to then to discuss with the parties in the contact group. This revised draft also contains two paragraphs which were originally not in our proposal but raised by another party in the contact group. We kept it in the revised version to mark that those points were not yet discussed, but we would be, of course, very interested in also including these elements in the decision and potentially a future decision on this issue. So with that, I would ask to re-establish the contact group and to continue the discussion on the basis of the revised draft.
Thank you, EU. Thank you, EU. CRP is in the process of uploading, so we would like to propose that we establish the contact group to discuss the new CRP, which is going to come very soon. And also I would like to see if there are parties who would like to take the floor on this matter. US, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to our colleagues from the EU for that update. Just a procedural question to make sure I understand. Will the revised CRP be presented first in the plenary before going to the contact group? If you could just, I think it's useful what the EU is doing here. I think it's going to be helpful to advance the discussions, but I just want to make sure, based on what you said a moment ago, of what the specific process is, which I think normally would be for the CRP to be introduced in the plenary. Thank you.
Thank you, US. So we will come back to this agenda item when the CRP is ready to be presented in the plenary. With that, I would like to move to agenda item 4I on nominations for critical use exemptions for methyl bromide for 2025. At OWG 46 in Montreal, the Methyl Bromide Technical Options Committee presented its interim recommendation for approval of the full amount of one nomination for critical use exemption for 2025 submitted in 2024 by one non-Article 5 party, Canada. In accordance with customary practice, the committee has produced a final report including its final recommendation for approval of the full amount of Canada's nomination for 2025. The final report is available on the meeting portal, and a summary of the final recommendation can be found in the addendum to the note by the Secretariat. 36-2 Ed 1. I would now like to call on the panel's Methyl Bromide Technical Options Committee to make a 5-minute presentation, 5 minutes, on its final recommendation. On behalf of all the parties, I thank Ambichok for its work to evaluate the nomination. Ambichok, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. On behalf of Marta Pisano and the TEEP Committee and the MEBTOC members, we would like to give this very exciting, what we hope might be the final CUN presentation for the Montreal Protocol. This particular year, MEBTOC received only one application for critical use for 2.85 tonnes of methyl bromide for pre-plant soil fumigation in 2025 at a single strawberry nursery in Prince Edward Island, Canada, where it is very difficult to get rid of methyl bromide. This 2.85 tonnes compared to 141 applications for over 16,000 tonnes that MEBTOC received in 2005. This year appears to be the last year for applications of CUEs for methyl bromide, and you can see the trend in the decline in the amounts of methyl bromide applied for under CUEs in the figure on the slide above. The final CUE recommendation for methyl bromide use for the Canadian strawberry runners was that MEBTOC recommended the full amount submitted, the 2.85 tonnes. It recommended that amount on the basis that this represented a 26% reduction from the approved amount at the 35th MOP last year. Also that the party indicated a reduction plan to potentially phase out completely by 2026, and that the party stated that much of the nominated reduction will result from fumigating with less methyl bromide on a smaller total acreage for all stages of production. And this is whilst the grower continues work to optimise indoor operations and rapidly increase their capacity for indoor soilless production. And you can see what they're adopting on the right-hand side there. They've come out of the soil and they're now producing out of the ground in very, very simple systems, but excellent systems for production of the nursery runners. Reporting of stocks under Decision 16.6, Para 1. We've done this every year for the last 20 or so. Canada reported no stocks at the end of 2023, so there's no room for adjustment of the amount. This decision only requires a party seeking a nomination to report stocks, and obviously there's no mechanism under the protocol to report on other stocks held by parties, and we've mentioned that before. The CU recommendations are not adjusted by us to account for stocks, but there aren't any to adjust for anyway, and we leave that up to the parties. Okay, the final slide, and we want you all to take note of this, please. This is a significant moment for the Montreal Protocol, and it talks about the controlled non-QPS methyl bromide, which is now essentially phased out, versus the quarantine methyl bromide, which is still controlled but exempt. The reduction of over 62,000 tonnes of methyl bromide over the last 2 decades for the controlled use has been a huge achievement for the Montreal Protocol and is a significant gain for the ozone layer at the moment. 30% of the improvements are due to methyl bromide phase down. So it hasn't been wasted controlling the use of methyl bromide. It's taken huge pain by agricultural industries globally, and we've still got a challenge. The challenge now is between 8 to 10,500 tonnes of methyl bromide are still used for QPS uses globally, and there are countries making huge strides and reductions in this space. What I'm going to do now is break with protocol, and the first point here deserves a bit of acknowledgement from for the Montreal Protocol, and I think we should clap every party that's used methyl bromide, and I said I would get a clap from this audience for this achievement, and I think it's worth doing. So well done, parties, for where you've got to. And with that, Madam Co-Chair, we finalise the presentation.
Thank you. And now I would like to open the floor for interventions. We will take both questions to the MBTAC and the final evaluation and general statements. The floor is open. Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. As a party nominating a critical use exemption for this year, I thought it would be appropriate to take the floor at this time. So first, Canada would like to thank the TEEP and the MBTAC for their work on reviewing the nomination for 2025 and the preparation of the final report, as well as the presentation that we have just heard. Canada recognizes the importance of demonstrating significant progress towards reducing and ultimately phasing out the quantity of methyl bromide nominated for critical use. So since 2015, Canada's sole CUE has been for pre-plant soil fumigation in the production of strawberry runners on Prince Edward Island by a single grower where alternative chemical fumigants remained unavailable due to existing regulatory barriers. So the nomination of 2.84 tonnes of methyl bromide for 2025 represents a significant reduction from the amount authorized for 2024 by Decision 3515, and is notably less than what would be required to fumigate the entire acreage under business as usual scenario. The nominated reduction for 2025 is based on the adoption of non-chemical alternatives for a significant portion of the operation, while also recognizing that a proportion of the reduction is still likely to result from fumigating a smaller acreage while the grower works towards a complete transition away from methyl bromide for 2026. In this regard, Canada considers that indoor soilless production is a suitable non-chemical technical alternatives to fumigation with methyl bromide for the grower's operation, while the capital investment required for soilless production is high and remains very challenging for this user. Canada does not see this as a reason to delay the transition for this operation. I'll recall that in 2023, Canada implemented a policy-based approach for this final nomination for methyl bromide by directing the grower to fully phase in indoor soilless production for the entire operation by 2026, thereby submitting a final nomination for CUE for strawberry runners for 2025. Canada is pleased to note that the final recommendation of the MEBTOC was for the amount of 2.84 for 2025, which is the amount that was nominated. As was noted by the MBTOC in their presentation, this represents a further 26% reduction from the amount authorized by the exemption granted for 2024. And I'm also reiterating that that this will be the final nomination for this application from Canada. So, as such, I would like to take this opportunity to convey our appreciation to the MBTOC for their work reviewing our nomination for critical use of methyl bromide over the years. Madam Co-Chair, Canada has engaged with, in the margins with parties that have shown interest on this issue in the past and has prepared a draft proposal for decision for critical use nomination 2025. But just before I took the floor, I did not see if the CRP was posted, but it is there now? Okay. So if you allow me, I would like to briefly present the CRP. So the draft decision takes the text of Decision 3515 last year for critical use exemption for methyl bromide for 2024, which parties agreed to at the last MOP, but includes minor changes to reflect the reduced amount nominated in this nomination, and also reflects Canada's commitment not to submit a nomination for 2026. So, in summary, the decision would permit Canada a level of production and consumption of 2.85 tons of methyl bromide for use in the production of strawberry runners for 2025 with the same conditions as previously agreed by parties specific to Canada's nomination. So we're hopeful that that parties can support the draft decision as presented in CRP, and I'd like to thank you, Madam Co-Chair.
Thank you, Canada, and congratulations. And we would like to open the floor for any comments on the draft decision, just introduced by Canada, including questions to the proponents. The floor is open. It's already posted, CRP 3. I do not see anyone requesting for the floor. In that case, can we suggest that it be forwarded to the high-level segment for adoption? I have Myanmar and EU requesting for the floor. Myanmar.
Thank you, Co-Chair. This is a second intervention of Myanmar. Yes, I would like to thank to CU and for their the comprehensive report. So we are also trying to use of methyl bromide, but according to the market condition, so the demand of methyl bromide is still increasing because of the buyer request to use the methyl bromide. So that is very important for our country because we are agriculture-based country, and that's why. So we would like to support the exemption for the methyl bromide for 2025 as well. So after 2025, we will make the specific decision or the following the protocol. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I give the floor to EU.
I didn't. Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. We would also like to raise our voices and congratulate Canada. This is indeed a great day, that this is the last final nomination to consider. We would also like to strongly appreciate the fact that the commitment of Canada not to submit any further nominations is explicitly stated in the decision, so we are happy to see that. And at the same time, we would also like to continue discussing in this format the remaining methylbromide uses for quarantine and pre-shipment uses with other parties. So again, congratulations.
Thank you, and we will close this agenda item. And we will Thank you, and then we will go back to agenda item 4J, strengthening Montreal Protocol institutions, including combating illegal trade. And we see that the new CRP is already been posted, and then I would like to give the floor to EU to present it to the plenary. EU, you have the floor.
You have the floor.
Thank you. We yes. So, as I mentioned before, we try to react on concerns by parties that some elements in our decision would a bit redundant compared to previous decisions. We tried to clarify the purpose of the paragraph on licensing systems, that it should not be repeating what the Secretariat already did in previous years, but rather to provide information document which is easily accessible, and to combine those the information with the elements important to establish compliant licensing systems. Equally, we had the reports from the Secretariat on cases of illegal trade, which are useful. And the Secretariat already provided some analysis of the data provided. But here we see the problem that the previous decision did not request the Secretariat to provide an analytical work on those elements, which the parties felt was very, very useful to have and to read. So here we would give the Secretariat the mandate to continue this work and go a bit in the analysis of the data provided. On the third element, the organization of exchange on the future steps to strengthen the compliance mechanism of the Montreal Protocol. There, the concern was mentioned that we called it an expert meeting, and that was of concern for a number of parties. So here we are clarifying that we indeed addressing the parties to have an exchange amongst themselves. And we added also an explanation that these discussions should be based on the various existing documents and information already provided by the parties. For the last two elements in the draft decision, I already explained that this is not the position of the EU, but that here we wanted to insert a reminder of text which was presented in the contact group, but not yet in more detail discussed. So here we would continue the discussion where we left them in Montreal. Thank you.
Thank you, EU. And now I would like to open the floor for any comments on the draft decision, including questions to the proponent. The floor is open. Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair, and good afternoon to everyone. We would like to firstly thank the EU for taking the time to reflect on the comments that parties had made at the OEWG and to present a new CRP for the consideration of for our consideration at this meeting. And we think there are some elements in the decision that might be quite useful to consider a little bit more deeply. In relation to the idea of a meeting of interested parties to reflect on the functioning of the compliance mechanism, we just wanted to note that we feel that that might be quite a broad articulation. I think our view is that we would want to be quite concise about how we would take this issue forward, and also that any work that we would ask ourselves or the Secretariat to do would actually be adding value to the work that has already been done. We are conscious that we have had a workshop on strengthening institutions in the past. We've had several documents, and we would want to try and see if there's a way forward to be more precise in what we might be wanting to seek under this particular sort of remit that the EU has put forward. So just a couple of quick reflections. We're of course happy to discuss this in whatever format the co-chairs see fit. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Australia. And now I give the floor to Switzerland.
Thank you very much, Madam Co-Chair. Strengthening institutional process remains a very important task. The Montreal Protocol will be 40 years old soon, and some processes need to be updated, improve, or further develop to allow the protocol to keep delivering on its objectives. So we would like to thank the European Union for bringing forward an updated version of their CRP. They've listened to the good discussion we had in Montreal, and we're very thankful for this version that has taken those into account. To echo what Australia has mentioned just before me, it is not the first time that we've discussed this. We have developed and discussed good elements. We have existing document. That's why we welcome the mention on para 3 in the CRP of building up the work on the existing documents. So this meeting of interested parties should be constrained in the frame that already exists, and this is something that we very much welcome. We also think that maybe there is a way to include some kind of expertise and knowledge within this meeting so that we don't go in every direction and we really focus on precise points that need to be addressed under the Montreal Protocol. So we are very much looking forward to discuss those points and find a good way forward to move on this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Australia, are there any other delegates who would like to take the floor on this agenda item? I see none, so therefore I would like to propose that we establish a contact group to discuss the new draft presented by the EU. And we would like to request Fatmat Usra from Maldives and Jana from Czechia to co-chair the contact group. The time in the room for the contact group, we will announce it later. And with this, I would like to hand over to my co-chair.
Thank you, Miruza. Then we are at agenda item 4K on energy efficiency issues, and first of all, the one on unwanted imports of energy inefficient products and equipment. Kyrgyzstan introduced a draft decision on avoiding unwanted imports of energy inefficient products and equipment at the last OEWG. The draft decision invites parties to voluntarily inform the Secretariat if they do not consent to the importation of such products and equipment into the territories, with the Secretariat maintaining and updating annually a list of those parties. There was a contact group established during the last OEWG. There was good progress, and reviewing the draft decision was made, but there was insufficient time to finalize the review. The working group agreed to forward the draft decision as revised by the contact group to this MOP. The draft decision is included as a draft decision in 35/H in the document. So I now would like to propose that we establish the contact group, re-establish the contact group that already existed, to continue the consideration of the draft decision that was forwarded by OEWG 46 to this meeting. Is that acceptable to everybody? I see no objection, so we can establish this contact group and re-establish the contact group. And one person is already known, that's Morin Gonfrin from France, who can be co-convener of this group. And we're looking for A5. There are some slight changes in the listing, so sometimes you don't hear the names immediately, but it will be announced later, and also when and where to meet. Then I would like to go to the next agenda item under 4K. Strengthening the enabling environment to enhance energy efficiency in the cooling sector. There was a draft or a CRP proposed by Grenada and Micronesia at the last moment of the OEWG. Due to those time constraints, we were not able to discuss this draft, but we agreed to put it forward to MOP 36 for further consideration. I would like to ask the proponents to present the draft decision to refresh the memory of all of us, and then we can have the reactions and comments from the room on this draft decision. And I suppose I didn't see my friend Leslie from Grenada, so I suppose that Micronesia will take the floor to introduce this. Is that correct? And I hope the microphone works now. Please, Micronesia. So the microphone doesn't work. So best would be go to Mauritania once again, and then please introduce the draft decision. Please, Micronesia, at the microphone of Mauritania.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair, and good afternoon, colleagues. My co-convener has had some technical difficulties in arriving, but I understand, or not co-convener, my co-proponent, but I understand that he's on his way.
Mauritania, yeah, or Micronesia behind the microphone of Mauritania. I don't know if the problem is now with the microphone or, but okay.
I'm going to feel a bit schizophrenic soon. So thank you, and I'll try to be brief before the microphone cuts me off again. So we are pleased to have the opportunity to present again to the parties the draft decision that we have brought forward on strengthening the enabling environments for energy efficiency. I was hoping that my co-proponent would be here to present, and so I beg your patience as I pull up the CRP for us to present. This CRP has several elements, the objectives of which are to strengthen the work that the institutions of the protocol are doing in order to better deliver on our objectives around energy efficiency in the RAC sector. For this reason, we have put together some elements that we think could help the parties to move in this direction. The first part of the CRP, the first paragraph with its sub-paragraphs, turns to the Executive Committee of the Multilateral Fund in a request to help strengthen this enabling environment. And that environment includes the national ozone units, the implementing agencies, and strengthening their capacity to prepare and deliver robust projects for the Executive Committee to consider in the windows that are currently available and that soon to be available to support these energy efficiency activities. We also propose in this paragraph the support or creation of regional centers of excellence for energy efficiency that would strengthen the capacity of the regions in a way that is tailored towards the needs of the countries in the region. The idea with a regional approach is to fertilize the capacity, the local capacity of countries to better strengthen the energy efficiency approaches. We consider that the global approach is sometimes helpful and sometimes less efficient, sometimes less supportive of the regional particularities and needs. So we are aware that there are discussions in the Executive Committee and some consideration to taking regional approaches, and so we would support with this discussion here that process there, not be duplicative, but we hope to be supportive of this regional perspective and strengthening. The second part of our proposal requests the Executive Committee to take special consideration for the circumstances of low and very low volume consuming countries in their decisions, in the upcoming decisions on provision of finance for non-investment projects under the operational framework on energy efficiency. It is the experience of the two countries that are proponents, both very low volume consuming countries, as well as other countries with which we have spoken, that the needs of very low volume consuming countries and low volume consuming countries require more attention in order to support our work and our efforts on energy efficiency. These efforts, from our perspective, are important not only from a climate perspective and from a Montreal Protocol perspective, but also to support our energy security. The third request turns to ozone action, to request that they consider funding, using the funding that they receive from the Executive Committee to support additional training, capacity building, and technical assistance for preparation and implementation of energy efficiency. So it's bringing kind of the various institutional pieces together to work collaboratively towards similar ends. And the final piece requests is a request to the TEEP to continue updating the parties on issues of relevance to energy efficiency, as they've been doing in previous reports. I would like to just conclude by saying that there are a number of countries in the Pacific and Caribbean region that have expressed their interest to Grenada and to Micronesia to also co-sponsor this CRP. There is a sense of urgency from many small island states around the opportunities and the need to take greater steps forward on energy efficiency, and a recognition that while this forum has done extraordinary work up to now to advance our knowledge and our capacity around energy efficiency, that we are still a long ways from moving towards the level of projects and delivery on energy efficiency gains that we have the potential to realize in this forum. So within the context of the contact group, we invite those parties that have expressed interest in co-sponsoring to share also their views, and we will update the CRP, and we want the parties to know that the updated CRP will only reflect those parties that wish to be acknowledged as co-sponsors. There will not be any changes to the content of the current CRP. Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair, and thanks to the parties for your patience. We look forward to the opportunity to hear from others and to discuss this in the context of the contact group.
Thank you, Micronesia, for reintroducing this draft decision. I'm now looking into the room of parties who would like to react on that. I have the United Kingdom, UK. Please, you have the floor.
Firstly, I would like to thank Micronesia and Grenada for presenting the draft decision. Energy efficiency as it relates to the HFC phase down remains an important issue for the UK. Most cooling technologies typically rely on HFCs and are essential for food security, access to water, and health. Rising temperatures and intensity of extreme heat events urgently demand more cooling to survive in a warming world. As global temperatures increase, so will the use of cooling equipment and subsequent emissions, unless action is taken. As Group 1 countries begin to prepare and implement Kigali implementation plans, we are presented with a critical opportunity to deliver even more climate benefits by taking a strategic approach to the phase down. There are many important elements included in this draft decision, and I would like to draw attention to the Centre of Excellence approach it refers to. An example of such an approach is demonstrated by the Africa Centre of Excellence for Sustainable Cooling and Cold Chain, or ACES. Located in Kigali, ACES adopts a systems approach by looking at integrated actions across the entire cooling sector. This model provides a blueprint for how a holistic approach to the HFC phase-down could be achieved. Actions are entirely country-driven and tailored to help parties meet their own needs and goals. This approach differs from other types of centres of excellence. The structure of delivery is through a hub and spoke model, with a single centre supporting one or more spokes in neighbouring locations. This structure supports the sharing of expertise and resource between centres, allowing for the rapid transition of knowledge, but also to adapt the teaching and outcomes of each centre according to the specific local needs. Centres of excellence can have a wide range of functions, for example, training technicians to install and maintain low GWP and energy efficient cooling solutions, developing financeable business models, technology testing and demonstration, enhancing access and availability to alternative technologies, and acting as innovation hubs to support local installation and assembly. There's been lots of important discussions at XCOM around energy efficiency. We note the ambitious funding window that was opened at the recent meeting for manufacturing activities, in addition to the funding window for pilot projects. XCOM is continuing to define the mechanisms by which the MLF can fund energy efficiency activities, and many of the elements included in this draft decision are already scheduled to be discussed at the meeting in December. Taking a strategic approach to Kigali can demonstrate once again the success of the Montreal Protocol, but it's important to make sure this discussion is happening in the right forum. We want to make sure that any decision agreed here at MOP adds value to the conversations happening at the next XCOM. We support the spirit of the proposal behind the draft decision, and we want to see ambitious action on energy efficiency. That said, we also want to ensure that any steps we take at this MOP does not interfere with the flexible mandate already provided to XCOM. We have questions around the specifics of the draft text put forward, and we welcome further discussion in a contact group. Thank you.
Thank you. And then the next speaker on my list is Barbados, and please indicate if you would like to speak and push the button. The only one now on my list. No, there are others coming, so Barbados, Canada, Cook Islands, please push the button. Barbados first.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. So first, I wish to thank the Government of Thailand for hosting us, and I also wish to thank the Ozone Secretariat for the work done to prepare for this meeting, and of course for facilitating my delegation's participation. Additionally, I wish to thank the proponents, Micronesia and Grenada, for putting forward the draft decision. While we note that we as Article 5 parties are encouraged to introduce maps to drive the update of alternative technologies, update HPMPs to support upskilling of technicians, and we welcome the funding windows created for investment and non-investment projects, my delegation supports the continuation of steps being taken to consider issues of energy efficiency and would support further discussion of the proposed CRP in whatever format the co-chairs deem relevant, as there are some ideas that warrant further exploration. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbados. Then floor goes to Canada, and afterwards I have Cook Islands, Kenya, and Australia. So Canada first.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. And first of all, we'd like to thank Grenada as well as Micronesia, and we thank Mauritania. No, just kidding. For the proposal on strengthening the enabling environment to enhance energy efficiency in the cooling sector. Generally, I mean, we have some sympathy with the sentiment that there has been challenges in preparing strong proposals to maintain enhanced energy efficiency under the multilateral fund. Particularly, there may be some challenges in the manufacturing sector, but also some challenges for low volume and very low volume consuming countries. And certainly something that we're interested in discussing, both here, but also within the Executive Committee of the Multilateral Fund. Like the UK, we continue to support ambitious action on energy efficiency. However, we also recognize that there are a number of elements in this decision that we've actually put within the mandate of the Executive Committee to consider. So we think that, you know, we need to be careful if we've asked the Executive Committee to do certain things, that we give the time for the ExCom's deliberation to evolve and to complete before we intervene again in the discussion. So just to recall, under Decision 28.2, when we adopted the Kigali Amendment, we asked the ExCom to develop guidance on maintaining and enhancing energy efficiency when phasing down HFCs. That discussion went on for several meetings. Then we were interrupted for 2 years during COVID-19. We were not able to address this issue substantively. Since then, decisions have been taken. Under Decision 89.6, low-volume consuming countries were provided with additional funding under the HPMP to address energy efficiency and the introduction of low GWP warming alternatives. Then at the 91st meeting, there was a funding window created for $20 million to allow all countries to present energy efficiency related proposals. And this funding window is open for both the servicing sector, for the manufacturing sector, and as well for the local installation and assembly sector. Even though $20 million has been available, we think that up to now, only $5 to $6 million of that funding window have been approved. So there is, you know, significant funding that is still potentially available through that window, and that could be accessible to low-volume consuming countries. And then at the last meeting, at the 93rd meeting, there was another funding window focused on the manufacturing sector for $100 million. And in taking that decision, the ExCom also agreed to consider at its next meeting issues that were raised by the Secretariat in the paper. That includes extending the operational framework to address other sectors, like the servicing sectors and the heat pump sectors, end users, and to consider other elements such as regional centers of excellence. So we feel that there are quite a number of the elements that are being sought after in this draft decision are being considered by the Executive Committee or have been considered already. So we think we need to be clear about if we're asking the ExCom to do something new, if we're asking the ExCom to continue the good progress that it has already made, or if the issue really is about some of the challenges that perhaps some countries have had in actually having the time and the resources to prepare project proposal. and perhaps then, ask the EXCOM to consider whether there are ways in which it can help, in doing that, without being too prescriptive, because, there are many different mechanisms that the EXCOM could be using to address this issue. But really, it is the committee that is in charge of providing the funding, which itself is governed by a whole set of rules and guidelines, and we should entrust this responsibility to them and not be too prescriptive in doing so. So that said, we do think the draft decision addresses issues that are of interest to parties and obviously are of concern to some low-volume consuming countries. So we would be interested in having further discussions in the contact group. Thank you.
Thank you, Canada. Then I would like to give the floor to Cook Islands.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. As this is the first time the Cook Islands has taken the floor, we wish to express our gratitude to the Secretariat for their excellent preparations for this meeting, and to the government and people of Thailand for their warm hospitality in hosting us. The Cook Islands would like to firstly thank the Federated States of Micronesia and Grenada for drafting the CRP, and we'd like to express our support for the proposal presented. We note the proposal recognizes a need to strengthen energy efficiency measures in the context of the HFC phase down, particularly as global temperatures rise and the demand for cooling equipment is predicted to triple by 2050. This increased demand threatens to place even greater stress on energy systems, further exacerbating climate change, a challenge that disproportionately affects vulnerable countries like ours. We also note the proposal recalls previous decisions of this body relating to energy efficiency and the phase down of HFCs, and emphasizes the need for greater technical and financial support, especially for A5 countries and low and very low volume consuming countries. Also, it calls upon the Executive Committee to enhance the enabling environment for parties, to support the development of robust energy efficiency projects, and consider the creation of regional centers of excellence for energy efficiency. As for the Cook Islands, we are already witnessing the direct impacts of rising temperatures and the increased need for cooling solutions in homes, public buildings, and tourism facilities has placed growing pressure on our energy systems, which rely heavily on imported fuels. Without adequate support for energy-efficient technologies, this growing demand will further strain our limited resources, increasing both costs and emissions. So our situation underscores the importance of this CRP, which calls for enhanced financial and technical support, particularly for low and very low consuming countries. We believe that this proposal may help ensure that all parties, regardless of their size or resources, can successfully integrate energy efficiency measures into their HFC phase-down efforts. So once again, we'd like to thank the proponents for introducing this important draft decision, and we welcome further discussions in a contact group. Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Cook Islands. And I have two more speakers now on my list. That's Kenya and Australia. Are there others who would like to speak? And show up some more, Vanuatu and Egypt, because I really would like to close then the list. So it's Kenya, Australia, Vanuatu, and Egypt, and then we would come back how we would like to proceed with this issue. Kenya first.
Thank you very much, Mr. Co-Chair. Actually, Kenya thanks Grenada and Federated States of Micronesia on this proposal of strengthening the enabling environment to enhance energy efficiency in the cooling sector while implementing the Kigali Amendment. Kenya welcomes the proposal to support the creation of regional centers of excellence for energy efficiency to provide various forms of assistance on energy efficiency in the refrigeration, air conditioning, and heat pump sector. Such regional center, Mr. Co-Chair, will serve as a good benchmark for the national context. In addition, Kenya right now is actually equipping some of the 3 training institutions in the country with the support of GIZ in actually equipping the training institution so that they become center of excellency. Mr. Co-Chair, actually the technicians, as we are aware now, actually need additional training, capacity building, and technical assistance on energy efficiency for the future. This can be made possible with high quality project proposal that address energy efficiency as proposed by the proponents. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenya. Australia, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair, and thank you also to Grenada and the Federated States of Micronesia for their proposal. It was submitted very late at the OEWG, so we're glad to have this meeting to reflect on the various elements in the CRP. We are supportive of how the Executive Committee has undertaken and progressed its work on energy efficiency while phasing down HFCs as was directed to us under Decision 28.2 when we adopted the Kigali Amendment. And I think the ExCom has made some really quite remarkable progress in the last few years and in the last few meetings in opening windows and providing funding to countries to look more closely into how they might improve the energy efficiency of equipment while they are phasing down HFCs. Some of these activities have been identified by Canada and others, and in fact, under some of the windows, there have been many projects already approved for low volume consuming countries to look particularly at energy efficiency in the context of servicing sector activities. So we do appreciate the sentiment that has been behind the CRP that has been put forward, like the UK and Canada have articulated. We do think that there is work already underway. In particular, the next meeting of the Executive Committee is particularly looking at a funding operational framework for non-manufacturing activities, including for the servicing sector and the potential for regional centres. And I think that perhaps we would need to be careful as a body that we are not constraining those discussions by any decisions that we might take here. So we would encourage the ExCom to continue its good work and to expand the work that it's already doing, and to continue to consider and approve projects for energy efficiency while phasing down HFCs. There have been many of them, and indeed I note that my understanding is that an energy efficiency project for Pacific Island countries is being submitted to the next meeting of the ExCom for consideration as well, and we are happy potentially to be a bilateral partner in that activity. So just to say that there's much work underway, and we would want to not we would not want this decision to perhaps constrain the work that is already underway, and to think quite carefully about any decision that we might take here, whether it constrains or perhaps duplicates the work that is already underway. So we are happy to have more discussions to try and tease out perhaps some more specifics in a contact group or however the co-chairs decide. But yes, we just want to be sure that we are following the same path as the ExCom and not perhaps getting in the way of the ExCom. Thank you, Co-Chair.
Thank you, Australia. Then I have Vanuatu. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Since this is the first time that Vanuatu takes the floor, we would like to thank the Ozone Secretariat for organizing this meeting and also thank the people of Thailand for their warm welcome in the beautiful city of Bangkok with a heat that reminds us of home. Vanuatu would also like to thank Grenada and Micronesia for initiating this proposal on energy efficiency that was initially discussed lately in OWG in Montreal this year, taking into consideration that Vanuatu is in the region of very hot temperatures as well that will be increasing in the future, which will maximize our demand for energy efficiency in the cooling sector. We would like to say that we support this proposal and we welcome further discussions on this in the contact group. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanuatu. And then the last speaker on my list is Egypt. I closed the list already a while ago, so Egypt.
Thank you very much, Mr. Co-Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. I think I add my voice to those who thanks Grenada and Micronesia for submission this proposal. And I listen carefully to what has been said by the distinguished delegate of Canada, that yes, the ExCom, thanks they open many windows for energy efficiency and strengthening the enabling cooling sector. I agree. And last is 20 million, and then another window for 100 million US dollar. And he mentioned that there are still available fund and not used the fund. So the question why it is not used, if it is the fund is available, but the parties cannot reach this fund. In my perspective, that when we draft the decision, sometimes we put some condition or constraint that it hinder or it's not flexible to the country to make use of the available funds. That's why we need some flexibility in drafting the decision, so we can, make the available fund easy for the party to make use of this. The second, I would like to refer to what has been said by the distinguished delegate of Australia. Thanks for the good news that in the next ExCom meeting, another window will be open. I hope it will be some good money because we also have a lot of challenges for the energy efficiency and strengthening the enabling cooling sector. And I hope that it will be flexible, and the good news that it will not relate it to the industrial part, because as my colleague from Kenya is also proposing some activities that is really needed, like the regional center of excellence. But I can add also, we have the testing lab for the rack equipment also need to be enhanced to be able to test the minimum energy performance of the equipment and to make sure and to enforce this regulation in the absence of this testing lab. How can we make sure that we are in the right enforcement of the decision or the regulation we are taking? There are a lot of activity actually, but no, yeah, and to be short, I know we are run of time. When we would like to co-finance some factory to produce hydrocarbon to encourage the industry, local industry, to convert to this technology. We need also to give some incentives to them or to support them. Also, we have some factory producing a compressor based on all the technology, and they are looking forward to convert their production to accommodate the new technology. And also it's a huge investment, and it's not, they are not asking for all the investment. They are only asking for some help or incentives or co-financing just to exhibit it and help them to go fast. And there are, to conclude, there are many activities that has indirect impact to the issue of energy efficiency and to the cooling, enabling cooling sector that might not link directly to the phase down of HFC, but it has also a great impact in the conversion and in the facilitate and make it the process more rapidly. So let us wait until we have the good news of the new funding, and I hope that the decision will be as flexible as possible, just to enable the party to make use and not to just providing some money, but we cannot reach this money. And I stop here and thank you very much, Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, and now I would like to talk a little bit about my co-chair. Thank you. The short discussion we had here, we like to propose to have a contact group on this issue, on energy efficiency. If that's agreeable to most parties. I see it is agreeable. then a contact group can be established and will be established on this issue. I would like to ask then Sergio Marino from Mexico and Alain Wilma to conduct this group. We are ahead of schedule, and I have a proposal that we very quickly go through 2 agenda items, and then we can finalize this meeting. First one is to go to the agenda item 4M, changes in the membership of TEEP. We had, let's say, at the last OEWG, that the attention was drawn to the list of the co-chairs and the members of TEEP and TOX, whose membership expires at the end of this year. And there was a request for nominations. And up to now, the Secretariat has received 10 nominations. I will mention them. Bella Maranion as TEEP co-chair, Adam Chataway as FS TOC co-chair, Daniel Vodonik, FS TOC co-chair, Polo Alto, FTOC co-chair, Sueli Carvalho, TEEP senior expert, Sukumar Devota, TEEP senior expert, Bassam El Assad, TEEP senior expert, Ray Gluckman, TEEP senior expert, Marco Gonzalez, TEEP senior expert, Shishu Zhang, TEEP senior expert. The nominations are all posted on the meeting portal. If parties are submitting additional nominations, then please do so as soon as possible, and they also will be put on the portal. I would like to propose that nominating of let's say persons, interested parties would discuss in an informal group and agree then on the nominations. And the Secretariat is requested to assist this group and prepare a COP containing the agreed nominations for appointment. We can then present that by one of the parties to the plenary at a later stage. The formal group can be given time and a room for its meeting. We think of Wednesday, after all the nominations have been submitted by interested parties. Is this an acceptable way forward? I see agreement to this, so there will be a room and time presented later on, and we can go to the last agenda item for this evening. We're making very good progress, so thank you. Miruza.
Thank you. So very quickly, we turn to agenda item 4O on the status of ratification of the Kigali Amendment. This agenda item seeks to memorialize the number of parties that have ratified the Kigali Amendment and at this meeting, and to urge parties that have not yet ratified to do so. On World Ozone Day 2024, the UN Secretary General and UNEP's Executive Director recalled the potential benefits of full implementation and ratification of the Kigali Amendment, which could help avoid as much as 0.5 degrees Celsius of global heating by the end of this century. 4 out of every 5 nations have already ratified the amendment, but the clock is ticking. As indicated by the Executive Secretary in her opening statement today, universal ratification in 2026 at the 10th anniversary of the Kigali Amendment is the target to achieve. In document 36 in 5, you will find the status of ratification of the Kigali Amendment by the parties as at 25th October 2024. At that point, 160 parties had ratified the amendment. A placeholder draft decision on the matter is set out as draft decision 36E in document 36/3. If parties agree, we will forward the draft decision to the high-level segment for adoption. The up-to-date number of ratifications will be inserted in the decision at the time of the adoption of the decision. With that understanding, can we forward the draft decision to the high-level segment? Thank you, delegates. Almost to 6, just 1 minute. So we will close the plenary for today and continue with the contact groups. You can, we will post it on the app, and also you can see it on the screen. Have a very good evening, everyone. Have some good Thai food. Rest well, and see you all tomorrow.
And announce also in the morning.
Yeah. You can also see tomorrow's contact group schedule as well. Thank you, everyone. We'll have the contact group on atmospheric monitoring. First meeting.